Hey everybody, welcome to the next tutorial. My name is Aaron and today we are going to talk about flags and how to use them to make dramatic lighting, but also how to use them for practical things like cutting flare out of a lens or cutting light off of a background. All right, so I've decluttered a little bit and I'm just going to talk about these two flags mainly to give you an idea of what you would want to do with them and how to kind of move them around on a set. Now, in the last tutorial, I showed you guys how to use C-stands effectively. If you haven't watched that and you don't really know what I'm talking about or have never used a C-stand before, watch that before you watch this. It'll give you a little bit of a better idea because we're going to kind of blaze through actually moving them around and setting them up. So the first thing, and the main thing that flags are used for, is actually blocking light. So for instance, right now on camera right, or on my left, there is a light that I'm using as like an edge light, and that flare is going into the lens. I like flare, so I left it like that. It doesn't really bother me. But on a lot of sets, they're gonna say, we don't love that flare. I want you to take it away. And that's the perfect time to use a flag. So in this case, I have this one already over here. I have it over the long leg like we talked about in the last tutorial. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna lay this thing kind of flat. And in fact, what we could do is flip it all the way up. So let's just say we take this flag and we flip it all the way up like this. And then we tighten this down and tighten this guy down. And now what I'm gonna look for on the camera is I'm gonna look for the shadow. So when I see it cross, which is right there, that means that that camera is flagged. So I could go all the way to there if I wanted to move it a little more out of scene. And then once I get to, it goes away, is right there, now the flare is back in the image. So you can see right away, this is one of the first and most effective things you can do with a flag is control light spill. That would make a lot of sense in a portrait, and I'm actually gonna put the flare back in because I like it. That would be really cool in a portrait. Let's just say you have somebody here and you're shooting them with really heavy rim lights or edge lights, and you don't want all that kind of haze that comes from flare. Well, you could use this to block the light in your camera. It's just that simple. And then you're not gonna have all that flare come out, and the picture is gonna be a lot crisper, it's gonna be a lot cleaner, your blacks are gonna be a lot blacker. So that's the first thing that you can do is cut flare or cut light from going into a camera. Okay, so we know you can block light from a camera, but what else can you do with it? One of the things that I use it for a lot is blocking light on people's faces. Now, the really interesting thing about shadows is they're actually the opposite of lighting. So when you hear people talk about lighting, they're gonna say if you want softer light, move the light closer to the person. And that's true, that's what you want to do. If you want harder light, you take the light and move it farther away from the person. That creates a harder light source. That's actually the opposite of what shadows do. So the closer you get, and you can see this anywhere if you're outside, the closer you get to the subject, the harder the shadow becomes. The farther away you get from the subject, the softer the shadow becomes. So depending on how you want the shadow to look on the person's face is dependent on how close you will have your flag. So with this guy, and I'm gonna demonstrate this just in video this time around. Next time we'll actually do a shoot and we're gonna use flags and grids and things like that. But for today, I wanna give you guys just a quick intro so when we get into that, you'll know what I'm talking about. What is really cool is you could use it to do a couple of things. One, you can use it to block light completely. So if you look at this here, if I put this right here, there's no light on the left side of my face. And that'll stop all this light from coming in. So if you were using that for the background or something, but you didn't want it on my face, you could do it like that. The other thing you could do is make it so that right now we're blocking all the light. You can let through a little bit of light. So now this side of my face is going to be more in shadow, but now we have a nice little strip of light coming through the front. And the more you open that up, the more light I have on my face. And this gives us a ton of control. Now, the big thing to think, if I take this little tiny flag and I move it way over here, it's going to do two things. One, it's going to get softer, and two, it's obviously getting smaller, so it's blocking a lot less light. This could be your desired effect, usually not. But for me, a lot of times I want to have it angled and close so that it gives you these really cool dramatic shadow effects. Okay, so I've moved around some things and taken some clutter out, but I want to demonstrate one more thing before we go. And this is a big one. This is cutting light off of backgrounds. A lot of times when you're doing really dramatic portraits, and I'm gonna step forward just a little bit here, really dramatic portraits, you'll have these multiple lights and you want them all to be doing something very specific. You don't want the one spilling into the next space and so on and so forth, because it doesn't create the mood and the look that you're really looking for. So in this case, I've put up this really hard side light, and this is gonna be super, super dramatic because I want you guys to be able to see what we're doing on the side as almost like a rim side light. But it's creating this mega shadow. You can see all right through here, it's creating this mega shadow on my background. Now let's just say I didn't like that and I wanna maybe put up another light later that has this really soft fall off from left to right or right to left or whatever. Well, we gotta cut all the light off of there, but I need to keep it on me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set it up in the front. This is not the way I would do it, but I want you guys to see it first. And then I'll cut to the next take and I'll show you guys where I would put it and how it will actually effectively cut the light off the background. So I have my flag right here. We're all set up, and I'm just gonna, for demonstration purposes, use it on the front here. So I have it over my tall leg. Sorry, my back is to you for a second here. And I'm just gonna move this guy into place. Now, to keep it as close to what we had as possible, you'll wanna try and keep the flag really close. And now I'm just gonna lift it up, and then I'm gonna bring it in to cut it off of my background. And right now I still see some, so I'm just gonna keep playing with it until we get it close. Let's just say I think that's actually from there it goes. Okay, so there it is completely. Now, my background should be basically black behind me, and I have this really intense edge light still on my face. So now we've effectively controlled the background, and we've put a really hard edge light on. If you're using flash or strobe, you could easily power these up or down or do whatever you want to do, but you would know that it was cut off your background. So in our final take here, final scene, I'm gonna move it the way that I would and kind of show you really quickly, and then we're gonna finish up. Okay, so here's how I would have everything set up. Obviously, what you really wanna do is get your stand outside of the frame. You don't want your stand sitting right over here. I just wanted to show you guys how I was moving things around. But now we have the C-stand set up over there with the arm sticking out, so it's blocking off the background but still giving me an edge light. Now the cool thing about this is you can kind of see two things in play. One, I can move this and flag it even more and create less of an edge light on my face. So this goes to that last thing that we talked about, where you can actually cut light off of faces. And if I move backwards or forwards, the edge light gets bigger or smaller. Or I could still do this and keep a little more light on me, just depending on what you want the image to look like. Those moves were just a couple of inches. So you can do huge things to a portrait and make them look entirely different. Now, the last tip I want to leave you guys with is when you're working with flags, and this is with reflectors too, you want to feather them slowly and then watch what's happening with your shadows. So when I was doing this and I'm moving it back and forth, I'm watching the edge to see what's happening with my shadow, and then I want to stop right when it is exactly where I want it to be. These things are pretty finicky when you get those really tight details and those tight highlights. You want to make sure that they hit exactly where you want to. You don't want any light over here that you didn't design to be over there. And that's the beauty of flags. You can use flags to design these elaborate sets and keep everything separate and beautiful and looking exactly like you want it to. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for this time around. Next time, we're gonna do a shoot with flags, and then we're gonna start working on showing you guys gels, where this whole package will come together. You'll be using flags, you'll be using gels, we're creating drama and doing all these different things, and those will drop in the next few weeks. We've got a crazy October ahead of us, but I'll try to keep tutorials coming to you guys. Plus, stay tuned, we're gonna be doing workshops here in either November or early 2019. Well, until next time, go use those flags. It'd be awesome.